Great, thank you. And I do want to welcome everybody. But before we get started officially, I'd like to just take a second to recognize the fact that we are in really troubled times, and we're glued to our news broadcasts about what's happening worldwide. And it may be a bit of a reach, I suppose, but I don't know what personally I can do about world issues, what's happening in Ukraine, but I get satisfaction out of Common Ground Alliance that in the context of what's going on in the world and the mess that seems to be on, that maybe here we can practice candor, civility, care for each other. And then in my fondest dreams, that might just be contagious. And also contagious because you folks are Common Ground Alliance, and amongst you are local leaders, state leaders, nonprofit leaders. And so we want to thank you so very much for being part of this effort. So I'll just turn it back to you, Callie, with that.
Great. Thank you for those very thoughtful comments, Ross. I think we all share those sentiments together. So great. Well, thank you. And again, if you're just joining us, we hope that you will introduce yourself using the chat feature. I'm going to ask Katie if she would share her screen as we get started. We're going to do a brief introduction right now before we get underway with our actual meeting. So again, my name's Callie Brooks, and I want to welcome you all to the Winter Common Ground Alliance meeting. We see so many familiar faces and some new ones too. I want to get started by reading some Zoom protocols. So tips for the meeting. Let's get started with, kind of make sure your microphone is muted. We have 180 people in a Zoom room. So try to keep background noise to a minimum. If you do come off the microphone, we really encourage you to think about changing your view to speaker view by clicking the view button with the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And again, I said earlier, it would be lovely if you would come off on your camera. We're trying to build community, and seeing faces is one way we can do that together. So if you're comfortable coming off onto the camera, particularly in your breakout rooms, we'd really be appreciative of that. Next slide, Katie. So everything that happens at Common Ground Alliance happens because people engage and support this work. I want to thank these headline sponsors. Without these sponsors, we couldn't do this work. Next slide, Katie. The headline sponsors continue. 100% of this work is funded by participations and sponsors. In preparation for the summer meeting, we'll be looking for more sponsors. The more we have, the more we can do together. Next slide. And these are our top tier and our supporting sponsors. Thank you so much. We're really grateful. I think then I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen, and we're going to do the official welcome. So Ross, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us started. And you're on mute.
Goodness. Thank you, Callie. You'll probably have to remind me several times today of that. Since the very beginning in 2008, the Common Ground Alliance has focused on speaking with one voice to Albany. Today, however, we've changed that. We want to speak to one another. This past summer, you, the Common Ground Alliance, created the first ever Community Blueprint. That blueprint gives us some insights, some recommendations for actions to be implemented by local communities, to municipalities, and you to be part of this effort. This community blueprint focused on housing, creating vibrant economies, community-based recreation, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and those will be our breakout sessions, which you'll hear about a little bit later. The purpose of this community blueprint is to inspire and motivate action by us, the local residents. The work is going to be difficult. It takes time. Much of it is done by volunteers, but we encourage you in that spirit to be a leader in the Adirondacks and take this community blueprint from just being words to being action.
That's great. Thanks, Ross. So we also want to just take a moment to remind you that there is no Common Ground Alliance staff or organization that runs this. It's an all-volunteer group of people that meet about 15 times per year to keep this regional work going. It's not a part of our day jobs, but it's something we all believe in, and we know that you do too. So we thought it would be very helpful just to take a moment to restate the mission and the vision of Common Ground Alliance.
Common Ground Alliance was created 13 and a half years ago. Maybe this is a little simplistic, but the notion was that if Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, this group goes into Albany and says to legislators, the executive branch, you got to do this. And then on Tuesday and Thursday, a different set of groups go in and say, boy, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. What's rational behavior on the part of a legislator? It's to duck. And so Common Ground Alliance came out of the notion that if there were shared things, shared ideas that we could bring forth, go to the Albany and the executive branch together, that maybe we could make a difference. We focus on environmental quality. We focus on economic vitality. We focus on community. And so what are the issues there that we can bring together, hold a forum, bring together hundreds of people with different viewpoints, and identify and resolve issues of common concern? Doing this results in a blueprint for the Blue Line, which we send to Albany, and now a blueprint for the Blue Line that we send to ourselves, the local communities.
Yeah, and over the years, the Albany Blueprint has moved several issues forward in our region around communication infrastructure, invasive species, land use planning, road salt and water quality, the health and safety land account, diversity and inclusion in our communities, childcare, and more, either by securing funding, supporting legislation, or simply by keeping an issue at kind of prioritized at that state level.
And it sounds to me like being a little bit repetitive here, but this notion that you are not attending somebody else's meeting. You're not attending the Common Ground Alliance as a visitor. You are the Common Ground Alliance. And so if this is going to be successful, it depends on not only good ideas for action, but then follow up. And so we really encourage you that you as individuals will help guide the future of this region at the local, regional, and state level. Once we do that, we will prioritize these ideas and let it be known that throughout the meeting today, while we talk about individual items and we highlight a few things, we will be recording everything. And this will be put together and sifted and shared. And will it be perfect? Boy, I guess not. We've made lots of mistakes, but we're growing, we're learning. And I go back to my very beginning comments that this may be one of the best examples I know of candor, civility, and caring.
Thanks, Ross. So now I'd like to ask Katie to share her screen again, and we're going to walk through the agenda. So today, we've just gone through the welcome and stage setting. I'm about to turn it over and we're going to do a speed dating session. Then we're going to introduce the community blueprint for the Blue Line. Then we're going to go into our breakout sessions, which should be really fun. Then we'll come back together and do a high-level report out from those breakout groups. And then we're going to end with some exciting news about our summer in-person forum.
Great.
Well,
welcome back, everybody. Hope you had fun and made some new friends or reconnected with old ones. We really do appreciate your feedback and suggestions regarding topics for the 2022 Summer Forum. So please take a minute now and throw a couple of your group's ideas into the chat box, and we'll read through a couple of those. So Willie says, thanks for flagging affordable housing, trailhead parking, and an economy supporting year-round living as possible summer topics. Absolutely. Sarah says affordable housing, climate change, wildlife corridors. That would be a new one for us, I think. Affordable housing. Ian Kelleher, overuse, modernized zoning codes, and a transition to form-based codes and housing were our primary topics. Absolutely, Dan. I think last year we started to get into some of that, the deeper dive on, what kind of zoning codes could be changed. And that was one of the things that our group talked about was kind of general topics like housing versus getting more specific. And at what point you may start to lose people, who wants to be down in the weeds, who wants to be at 30,000 feet. So definitely good feedback. Tyler Merriam says affordable housing and an entrepreneurship ecosystem. Teresa, support for housing for those at 80 to 120% of the AMI. Food insecurity and housing. All right, well, I could keep reading them, but I want to keep us on schedule. There's a lot, and we'll have a record of all of these eventually for folks to refer back to. So I lost my screen.
You're introducing our next speaker, Bill Farber.
I sure am. It is now my pleasure to introduce Bill Farber, Supervisor of the Town of Morehouse, and Craig Leggett, Supervisor of the Town of Chester, to present the new Community Blueprint. So Bill and Craig, over to you.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. I think probably a lot of the people that are on today know me. I've been kicking around Adirondack issues for quite some time. And I've been involved with the Common Ground Alliance since the beginning. I thought Ross gave a great overview of the Community Blueprint and where we were headed, but I just want to call out two specific things with respect to the Community Blueprint and CGA. I think it's a reflection of our evolution in that we are listening. We listen to the people that were concerned that when we worked on the Albany Blueprint, maybe they didn't hear some of their detailed comments or their specific comments or didn't see them in the Albany Blueprint, where we were really trying to focus on what from the Common Ground agenda aligned with Albany's agenda and how to get things done there, how to get money and resources or issues resolved, as Ross said. I think the other part of that is in our evolution, we started in the very, very early days agreeing on mom and apple pie. And it frankly is much easier in a CGA style setting to figure out how to critique Albany than it is to figure out how to work together and get to yes on some of these detailed issues. Matt just mentioned it a little bit as it applies to something as complex as the housing issues, workforce housing, housing affordability, those things. When we get into the detail of those issues, it's really us trying to take CGA to the next level. Take responsibility for getting to yes, working with and through the community blueprint and the communities to do those things rather than simply being the people out there that are critiquing what Albany does. So I think this is an exciting evolution of CGA. I think it will test us in terms of our ability to work together and get to yes and figure out in detail complex problems. But with that, it is my privilege to introduce Craig Leggett, who will take you through some of the details of the Community Blueprint before I wrap up and we kick it back to the bigger group.
Oh, thank you, Bill. Katie, if we could have the next slide, please. Is that possible? There we go. There's 4 breakout groups, 4 main topics here. So as mentioned in the last slide, These are all ideas for action that can be implemented by municipalities, organizations, and at the community level within the park. So there's the 4 community-based blueprints. The first is housing in Adirondack communities. As you read through this list that were developed from the summer CGA program, these are what you'll be discussing today and building upon. Now, it's widely recognized, broadly accepted that housing at all levels is a problem, and we need to deal with it. So that requires working with all levels of community, from grassroots organizations, volunteer boards, local governments, all the way up to state agencies. So your mission today is to advance any of these ideas or others towards effectiveness, to making a difference in each of our communities. Your facilitators will be Joe Pete Wilson and Jim McKenna for the housing in the Adirondacks. Next slide, please. That, I'm doubling screens here. So, creating vibrant economies. We all yearn for a quality of life. The quest for livable, vibrant communities high on the list for most people. So a place with things to do, with good amenities and services, jobs and opportunities, community engagement, add up to be a vibrant economy. This usually doesn't happen by chance. It's put together over time by people dedicated to and attracted to a place for its innate qualities and its cultural amenities. We love where we live and we want the best for it. So by identifying the key components that create and maintain a vibrant economy in this breakout group and taking the above ideas and moving them forward, you'll be helping us all on satisfying our quest. This breakout group is hosted by Elizabeth Cooper. Next slide, please.
I think I'm out of, sorry, I was out of order, Craig.
Was it out of order?
I don't know, but maybe.
I'm on climate change mitigation and adaptation. You know, technical difficulties here. My other computer gave up this morning, so I'm working off the laptop, can only see one screen here. Are we on climate change mitigation and adaptation?
Yes.
What happens in our backyard is important to us. And there's some things we can control and some things that are way beyond our control, like an increase in severe storm events that create havoc across our communities. Again, the responses for changing climate are broad and varied. Some will have easy buy-in, some will be a difficult sell. This is the reason there is a Common Ground Forum. This is the place to work out workable solutions for the benefit of our communities. For those of you who have chosen this breakout group, consider the listed ideas, drill down to the possible next steps. This breakout group is led by Callie. Who is this led by today?
By Peg Olson and Willie Janeway.
Thank you. Thank you. Is the next slide community-based recreation?
Correct.
Thank you. So recreation is good for the soul. We all know that. And it's part of a vibrant economy, providing all of the quality of life amenities. We know that as well. Community-based recreation can be extensive and it can be intensive, from wide-ranging trail networks to having several pickleball courts. A community uses all kinds of interactions between citizens, volunteers, member-based organizations, and government agencies to create and maintain recreational amenities that benefit residents and visitors alike. Our natural environment gives us a lot to work with, and it's our social environment that makes it happen. Where is the common ground when a community wants more motorized trails and another community wants human-powered opportunities? Each community will create their own blend of recreational assets, and regions and areas will be known by them and the culture they create. So this breakout group's mission is to take the ideas from the summer forum, distill them, maybe add other ideas that come up, and propose what would work for their or other communities. Community-based recreation breakout group will be facilitated by me, Craig Leggett. I'll now turn things back over to Callie.
Great, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and actually turn it over to Matt. Matt, are you going to introduce the breakout groups? And then Doug.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do so. Thanks, Callie. Thanks, Craig. Just to recap, today's breakout session will be facilitated by members of the Common Ground Alliance core team. Housing by Joe P. Wilson, who's the supervisor of the town of Keene, and Jim McKenna, president and CEO of the Regional Office of Sustainable Tourism. Vibrant Economies by Elizabeth Cooper. Elizabeth is the executive director of the Adirondack North Country Association. Community-Based Recreation by Craig Leggett, supervisor of the town of Chester. And Climate Change by Peg Olson, the Adirondack chapter director of the Nature Conservancy, and Willie Janeway, executive director of the Adirondack Council. For the breakout session, you'll be prompted on your screen to pick one of 4 breakout groups. Once again, those are housing, vibrant economies, community-based recreation, and climate change. If you have trouble, Doug will be around to assist. Eventually, he'll find you. In addition to a facilitator, each breakout group has a few content experts embedded and a scribe. A member of each breakout group has been pre-assigned to record their session for future reference. If you're that person, please don't forget to do so. When we reconvene in about 45 minutes, we'll ask a representative from each breakout group to report out on 2 to 3 main points, tools, or action items to share with the larger group. The scribe from each breakout group will send notes our way for consolidation and sharing via the Common Ground Alliance website. We have secured permission from our content experts in each breakout group to share their contact information, and we hope to keep the conversation going on the Adirondack Almanac website as well. With that, Doug, let's go ahead and please launch the breakout session.
Great. As Matt said, once I open the rooms, you'll be able to select the conversation you'd like to join. If you have
I'll come off mute and welcome people back as people are slowly coming back in from their breakout groups. Bob Stegman's going to be up on deck to facilitate out the breakout groups. Thanks again for joining us. I think we have a few new people who have just joined for the report outs. Looks like we're all coming right back in. And Bob, are you able to get off mute and facilitate us out?
Yep, I'm here. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Bob Stegman. I'm retired, was a regional director for DEC for a bunch of years and have been involved in Common Ground Alliance activities for a decade. I was really, I was in the climate change session, and I was really impressed with how we're taking great ideas that have been developed in the blueprint, and now we're trying to boil them out to things that we can take actions on. So I'm going to facilitate quickly the report outs of each of the 4 groups, and there'll be 2 to 3 ideas coming out of each of these. We need to keep the timing to about 4 minutes to 5 minutes each. And I will then I'll go from, as we finish one, I'll pass it to the next. So I'd like to start with housing, and Joe Pete Wilson is a facilitator with Jim McKenna, and the report out is being done by Marcy Neville. So we could go to Marcy.
Hi, everybody. I'm here because we can't be in 2 places at once. And for those of you that couldn't be in the housing session, I'm going to try to give you a couple of takeaways. I'm not going to try to summarize Dan and Teresa's presentations, and I'd encourage you to look at them when they become available. They have done amazing work at different scales. Dan is sort of working at the regional scale, and Teresa's more at the town scale. But there's a lot of very pithy, meaty information there and links, and there's no way I could summarize it all. But I'm going to try to keep this brief. And my first takeaway is, if you are a newly formed group, or maybe you don't even have a group yet, a task force, a committee that wants to work on housing, maybe you haven't done a housing study yet, or interviewed your businesses, or have a piece of land or funding, or a municipally approved plan. You're just getting going. There's still a lot you can do. You know, most Adirondack communities are small, and chances are your group knows your community already pretty well and knows a fair amount about the housing stock. So the first thing I would say is think locally, think hamlet density, and think outside the box. There's a lot you can do. And, you know, because the communities are small, it doesn't take a lot to make a difference. An example, local not-for-profits need housing for summer interns. Local farms and businesses need housing for seasonal employees. You could do local home shares. You probably know people who are already living in a house that's too big, that would love to have a little bit of extra income or a little extra company or a little bit of help stacking the firewood. Reach out to people. It doesn't take that many to make a dent in your community. And you know, the act of reaching out creates its own synergy, I think, and gets people involved. Encourage this was a point that has been made by a lot of people, and I wasn't going to make it quite so forcefully, but so many people brought it up in our chat session that I'm going to say, if you don't have some regulation of absentee, unmanaged short-term rentals in your community, you've got an open wound. You have got to do that. Short-term rentals, I'm not against them across the board, and many people spoke up for them. But if they're unmanaged and the landlords are absentee, these are not an asset to your community. You'd also need to balance that out by incentivizing your long-term rentals. Help, you know, there's a lot of existing programs, winterization, weatherization programs, landlord assistance, down payment assistance programs. These are programs that already exist that you can help support and make more accessible in your community. And again, doesn't take too many of those, you know, to help someone out. The other thing you can do is encourage hamlet residents and hamlet businesses where, you know, the APA doesn't have so much say, to renovate that garage or that barn that's in the backyard, or add an accessory dwelling unit for year-round rental. These are all things that just sometimes, but just by encouraging them and getting your local government behind them, can make a big difference. So don't ignore the little stuff. It's really important in small communities, and it really can make a difference. My second takeaway is plan.
A little bit of a time check, okay?
Okay, how much left?
Just a minute or two.
Oh, okay. Plan and plan and plan. Do get those housing studies, do interview people. If you're looking at, you know, the moderate income level for a project, and you already have some funding and some land, you're going to have a diversity of approaches and funding. Dan did a lot of work on deed restrictions. There's great information in his presentation about that. The Adirondack Community Housing Trust also offers that. Partner with people who have staff if you can. You're going to need to use private philanthropy. If you don't have a not-for-profit of your own, you could consider starting one, or use an existing one that has staff. The Adirondack Foundation can help with this. You need to have a way to be able to take money, land, and structures. The other place to look is municipalities. Ask for municipal help. Your town might have land. They might be able to assist with installing, you know, road, sewer, and water, or assist with maintenance of it. And lastly, don't ignore the state and federal programs. We do need the low mod housing, rental housing as well. And you know, that's not a bad place to start. The housing assistance program can help with that. Those programs exist. So that's it for me. I just want to say housing is infrastructure. Work your plan and just keep pecking away at it. It creates its own energy. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good job. Let's move into vibrant economy. Elizabeth Cooper was the facilitator, and the report out's being done by Erin Tobin.
Hi, everyone. So in the Vibrant Economies breakout room, we focused on one of the 5 ideas from the summer meeting, which was new workspaces in downtown settings in old buildings, which was right up my alley. Looking at factory in Glens Falls, firehouse in Plattsburgh, on the Oval, and church in Saratoga Springs. Universal Preservation Hall in Saratoga Springs, Teddy, one of who's works with Universal Preservation Hall, talked about how they got this very underutilized historic church in Saratoga on the west side back up and running as a community space, an art space, as well as a congregational space. So balancing both needs and the ways that that they were able to partner. And I think the themes from her presentation were really about partnership. Finding the right architect was a really big one, which I think doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion, in terms of helping to make incentives work for using existing buildings. And then advice, the importance of technical assistance and fundraising and marketing assistance, not ever giving up on a project, and also the importance in believing in it, and that there's contagiousness in that. They were able to, for example, fundraise for a feasibility study by selling shares in the project. Now in Saratoga Springs, those shares were $2,500 each. They raised that money in 3 days for a $45,000 feasibility study. Maybe that's not scalable in all communities, but there's maybe not to that scale in all communities, but it's something that can be scalable. The many different ways of funding. And I think that's a very important underlying theme, is that it's not just one single funder, it's merging all of them. So Empire State Development, Restore New York, private donations, historic tax credits, grants from nonprofits, all these funds merge together in order to create, and federal funding in order to create this community performance space. Then the Shirt Factory in Glens Falls, which was a great, very different model. And Eric, the owner of the factory, talked about that. And this is a model where it's a for-profit. The building is owned by a for-profit, and it was intended initially to be a business for his machine shop, and then renting out the upper floors. But in this instance, it was a great example of responding to the market. And he started getting approached by artists and kind of gradually and incrementally built up the space, working closely with code officials for general construction guidance and flexibility, which I think is really key to success. And then really leaning into the fact that this was a space that artists wanted to use. And I think one of the lessons there is flexibility. He had one idea for what the space could be. There was interest in something a bit different, and he went with that. And now he has 100 individuals and businesses in both the original Shirt Factory and another building that he acquired, a bakery, a distillery, a commercial kitchen, stained glass window restore. That's a really, and then that's also drawing people from outside of the community, and people are moving to Glens Falls because of that Shirt Factory project. The third project was, Jesse talked about Oval Brewing on the Oval in Plattsburgh. And this balanced Eric's theme of work. He had a lot of cooperation with the code officials.
Just a little time check. So got a couple minutes.
Okay, almost done. So in Jesse's situation, it was some issues with the regulations, and similar, and a big theme there was, what to do when you are kind of hitting roadblocks, and signage. Signage is a big thing. Directions, GPS sending people to the wrong place. There was, we talked about issues with signage for Frontier Town and ways to mitigate that. Final piece is the importance of comprehensive planning, which was the theme in the housing and was echoed in the Vibrant Economies.
Great job getting all that done. Okay, next, community-based recreation. Craig Leggett was the facilitator, and the report out's being done by Leslie Carrison.
Hi, thanks. So we saw some really inspiring presentations that were amazing examples of community-based recreation in Warren County, in Tupper Lake through the James Furnett cross-country ski area, and in programs that are facilitated by the Adirondack Mountain Club, both locally and statewide. And I think theme-wise, in terms of what popped out for me as one humble report outer, I think the most resonant themes had to do with, creating and building access to recreation and creating and building programs for youth, and trying to make sure that we think about recreation as an asset for our communities and our residents and our second homeowners, and also for tourists, but thinking about it as a community asset that can really give our kids a sense of pride of place and a sense of belonging and community, and thinking about the barriers to that and working to overcome those barriers. So a couple of examples that we heard had to do with the youth programming at the Tupper Lake James Frenette cross country ski area, and how that has really ballooned in popularity to having over 50 kids registered this year. The Adirondack Mountain Club's 4 Seasons at Heart Lake program, which builds a sense of pride of place for 4th graders in the region. And it was pointed out that that because of the virtual opportunities this year, and just because of that as a model, we could expand those kinds of opportunities to other communities and other kids region-wide. We also heard about Adirondack Mountain Club chapters enhancing access to recreation through partnerships with libraries through a backpack program that helps to create an opportunity to access recreation in that way. We heard an amazing story about the first Wilderness Heritage Corridor in Warren County expanding a letterboxing program, which has created opportunities for a more accessible form of recreation that's been especially attractive to kids and also to older people, and has really outstripped the anticipated demand, so that Warren County initially had planned to print 500 passports for the program and has already distributed 4,500 in, I believe, just 1 year. So a very popular and exciting program that has linked local history and local recreation and opportunities to engage in the outdoors, and has helped people realize about assets that exist in their backyard that they perhaps never knew about before. And we heard about themes having to do with engaging communities and building partnerships and engaging with audiences that maybe are not always on the go-to list. So for example, how can we have a stronger conversation about engaging seasonal residents and so forth? And how can we make sure that our volunteer base, which is so important to sustain some of these programs, is strengthened through that? So we heard about some examples of organizations that do a good job with that. So I think with that, I will wrap up before you tell me I'm at time, Bob.
Perfect. I know that's a big job. Okay, last but not least, especially not least, climate change. And Peg Olson's going to do the report out. She was also the facilitator.
And Nancy Bernstein is going to do the report out for us.
That's right. Hello, everybody. I'm Nancy Bernstein. I'm an energy circuit rider with the Adirondack North Country Association. And, climate change is a big topic. And planning for climate change, of course, is huge. So this breakout focused on our local government's role in both, well, there's mitigation and reducing the effects of climate change, but then there's also adapting to climate change. But we really spoke about the local government's role and programs to support local government's actions in mitigating climate change. So we had 2 presentations, one by Katie Malinowski of the Tug Hill Commission, who served on the climate, let's see, I don't know if I could get it correct, but was one of the members that helped to draft the climate action plan that New York State recently released, and she worked with the local government planning part of that plan. And so that was really helpful hearing about many of the recommendations that the plan is recommending for local governments to take. And then we also had a presentation by Erin Griffin and Jamie Konkoski of the village of Saranac Lake, spoke about the village's excellent work in navigating through 2 New York State programs, the Clean Energy Communities Program, which is a NYSERDA-based program, and the Climate Smart Communities Program, which is comes from the DEC. And they've made amazing advances over the years, and what's going on in the village of Saranac Lake. And I will say, as a my work with ANCA is to work with communities in the Clean Energy Communities Program, and also somewhat in the Climate Smart Communities Program. We will be doing more of that. And there are communities all throughout the park and the North Country that are tackling these programs and taking action, not just Saranac Lake. Saranac Lake's a huge leader and making great strides, but from Saranac to Inlet, from Westport to Scroon, outside of the North Country, which is, the region that we deal with at ANCA, is, we have Chestertown and Lake George, Old Forge, doing some really great things. So I want to just make sure that, Saranac Lake gets, got a great chance to speak about what they're doing, but there are many more. Indian Lake, I could go on and on. But some of the takeaways I think that we came out with is to navigate these programs, it really takes volunteers, especially with the Climate Smart Communities programs. They're critical. And, we need volunteers with expertise, and we need most importantly, probably volunteers with commitment. And, we spoke about how best to recruit those volunteers, especially in the smaller communities. It's tough. And I will say the Clean Energy Communities program really, that's something municipal leaders can tackle. There's money available and there's a technical assistance available to really take the necessary steps to do clean energy actions in their community. But for Climate Smart, I would say that, you got to have some helpers. And so that means we're all on the hook. Even if you're not a local government leader, elected official, you still can help in your community to make some change. There are resources available. There are resources available, through the state programs. There are technical assistance providers like ANCA does in the North Country for these programs. And there will be more, because that's what some of the recommendations in the Climate Action Plan have. And then the last point I think I'll make is just that the work we do in climate action planning is, we really need to make sure it's incorporated, it's integrated with everything else we do, whether it's the housing, economic development, environmental protection, that it is all related. And so our work, it's a synergy. Our work in one area is going to help in other areas. I think I captured much of it. If there's anything else, Peg's shaking her head. So thank you very much.
Well done, Nancy. Thank you.
Pretty good to do that in a few minutes. And before I hand this over, I just want to encourage everybody to think about continuing this conversation in the Adirondack Almanac. That will be something that will be forthcoming. I think this has been a great job. What I really am enthused by is to see the big ideas that being boiled out to actually stuff that we can do on the ground. And let's keep this conversation going. And with that, I will turn it over to Callie.
Great, Callie and Ross, if you want to join me for just a few closing comments. Ross, do you want to get started and then I'll wrap it up?
Sure. One, I've been to several of these forums and meetings, and I always think, oh, I've been there before. I always walk away with an idea that I hadn't heard before. And so I just want to thank everybody there for expanding my education, and I hope others. The other thing I want people to know is and we've said it, but I want to remind them again, is that while the report outs were the highlights, we do capture the whole thing. And how's that used? It'll be used to help shape our forum for next summer in terms of unanswered questions. It'll be used in terms of possible articles in the Adirondack Almanac. It'll be used in our interaction with legislators and local community leaders. So I just want to add a big thank you to everybody for your contributions to this.
Thanks, Ross. Yeah, and I'll just say that we hope you keep the conversation going. Please reach out to the people you've met today. Share your enthusiasm around town at Stewart's, and as Ross said, on the Adirondack Almanac. I'm happy to report that we are going to have a in-person meeting on June 15th at Gore Mountain in our North Creek Village. So we're really excited. We hope we see you and hundreds more of our friends and family around the Adirondacks. We hope you get excited and your ideas will be brought to bear when we get together on June 15th at Gore Mountain. So with that, I will say thank you very much. Thank you deeply to the Common Ground Alliance core team, to each of you, to the speakers, the scribes, maybe most importantly, to Doug Haney at Great Range for helping us facilitate this and get this off the ground. Keep the conversation going, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Callie. I will note that the meeting was recorded and the breakout sessions were recorded. Each one of you who attended today, thanks again. You will get an email after this meeting today that will have links so you can go back and reference these things later on and keep the conversation going. If you know of anyone else who wants to join us, go to commongroundadk.org and click that get involved link up in the upper right hand corner. Thanks again and great work, everyone. I hope you had a good day.